Some straight talk to single women from best-selling author Michelle McKinney Hammond.
Sex is not a deal maker or a deal breaker. There are many people who have slept with 20 men and they're still not married to any of them. So the bottom line is the man that is for you is going to honor you enough to honor your desire to walk in purity before God. And he's going to see that as a precious thing. And you give up your power when you give it up. I mean, that's just the bottom line. God has made a man in such a way that his testosterone rises and reminds him to go in pursuit of a mate. And every time that you give in, you put him back to sleep. And you wonder, when is he going to wake up and smell the coffee and ask me to marry him? Well, you keep putting him to sleep.
If you're single, chances are you've read or seen in the bookstores or airports one of the 40 books written by Michelle McKinney Hammond. Titles include 101 Ways to Get and Keep His Attention, Right Attitudes for Right Living, and Single, Sassy, and Satisfying. Today on Excellent Living, Michelle McKinney Hammond joins our host Cheryl Martin for a frank dialogue on being single in today's culture. Michelle is known for keeping it real, and she does. Let's listen.
Michelle, you first came to my attention in 1997, and I still remember how excited I was when I got your book, What to Do Until Love Finds You, Getting Ready for Mr. Right. And I was excited for several reasons. One, of course, because of the topic. Mm-hmm. But also, I remember being thrilled that the author was this attractive, intelligent, committed believer, this African-American woman who had written this book for a major Christian publisher. And I devoured this book. And then, of course, I remember picking up the next book, and I think it came out the very next year, mm-hmm. The Secrets of an Irresistible Woman. Mm-hmm. And then I was thrilled to hear you speak for the first time. I mean, I just still remember that, and you remain, after all these years, still one of the major voices when it comes to speaking into the hearts of singles. Mm-hmm. Did you expect or have any idea when you came out with that first book that you now have written more than 30 books?
No, I never thought I'd write that many books. And for me, it was just a cathartic exercise of exercising my own personal single demons when I wrote What to Do Until Love Finds You. I had gone through so much in that area, and I had been such a miserable single and was determined to conquer it and to master my life and get on with the business of living. I don't know if I shared with you, but back during that time, I had gotten so sick and tired of being sick and tired that I had challenged God and said, look, I don't want you to give me a mate until you can prove to me that I can be happy with just you, because I've got to figure this thing out, or what's the point? I should just bail on the whole salvation exercise if I can't get the basic of this down the way I think I need to have it. I can't tell people that Christ is all they need if I don't believe that myself.
What made you the most miserable when you said you were sick and tired?
Well, I had always had a man in my life. I just, if one relationship didn't work, I bounced to the next one, And
this was before Christ?
This was before Christ. And I came to Christ through the loss of a boyfriend who actually was shot and killed. And it really made me face the reality of eternity and what happens afterwards. And I just went into such a pit of black depression that only Jesus could pull me out. And so when I came to the Lord, I loved the whole salvation idea. I loved the fact that Jesus loved me and he gave me this wonderful peace. But now what? On with the rest of my life. And I thought that I would find, some man to get married right away, and it didn't happen. And all of a sudden, it was a very different type of lifestyle, different choices. And I found that most men weren't going along with my saved and holy choices. And so I was thrown into the dilemma, whoa, wait a minute, adjusting to a completely different mindset and approach to life, period. So many things had to be rearranged in my life. And I see why the word says that our minds have to be renewed in order for our lives to be transformed.
In other words, I love this aspect that I'm a new person in Christ, but I didn't expect as a result of accepting him not to have a love life.
Exactly. And so that wasn't working for me very well, and I kept trying to help God fix it, and so I did the missionary dating thing. I'm a believer, but I'm just going to save me some cute unsaved man. And so I went through the gamut of all the things, all the don't do's, and just crashed and burned miserably, and moved to LA during that time because I had a little boyfriend out there. And so I moved out there, kind of positioned myself for him to choose me, and he didn't. And that sent me into a deeper pit of depression. And I was talking to my mentor and just, trying to figure out what's wrong with me, what's wrong with life. And I just finally just bottomed out altogether after I'd warned everybody else out about it. I said, God, you gotta make this thing real for me. And so at that point, I pretty much declared a man fast and just decided to just focus on God to see exactly what love looked like. What was I supposed to be expecting? What was I supposed to be looking for? And how did that translate in a place in my heart where I could have peace being who I was, where I was, until things changed? And it was a very interesting place to get to, but I did find joy and I did find peace, and I was shocked by it. And I was sharing that with my mentor, Bunny Wilson. And Bunny said, you need to write that down. Nobody's written that. And I'm sure there's not a singles book that's talking about what you're talking about. And so at that point, I decided to write the book I wish someone had written for me when I first came to the Lord. So that's why I think one of my earmarks of all the books I've written that people say they like about my books is that I keep it real, that I'm honest, and I deal with where people really live. And that was critical for me, because the two books that I found as a new believer, 4 singles, were both so spiritual that I found myself questioning my salvation more than finding the help that I needed to navigate through the situations I was facing. So I kind of wrote the book as an instruction book for myself based on what I had learned, hoping that I'd be able to help someone else through the same types of places.
Were you surprised by the response?
It was overwhelming. And I don't know if you know this, but the book sold out of its first printing in 3 weeks. And the publisher was beside themselves because they didn't expect it. I was a new author, and they weren't prepared for the sellout. So I actually had called the company to order some books for myself, and they didn't have any books. And they were on back order. And someone else had called me and said that they went to a bookstore and they were out and the book was on back order. So I called the publisher and they said, this has never happened before. And they tell me the story about this guy running through the warehouse looking for a box of my books and they weren't there, and them not even anticipating selling out. And they're like, what? How did this happen? She's an unknown author. And I said, well, the author isn't very well known. I just took dictation from the author, Jesus himself, So obviously I had hit a nerve in the single community, and everyone was rushing out for that book. So they came back to me and said, what do you want to write next? And I was like, you mean I got to keep this up? I mean, this was just an exercise for me to get this out of my system. And all of a sudden, I was plunged into the publishing world with everyone coming at me wanting a book. And so, I'm up to 40 books now. So 40 books later, here we are.
Do you think that one of the reasons why single women resonated with you, your background, I think, or what you were bringing to the table was very different from the standpoint of you were very candid about, as a single, first of all, I didn't know the Lord. I had boyfriends. I was sexually active. I'm now a Christian, and I'm admitting there is a struggle here.
Yeah, I find that people appreciate transparency. They appreciate you being real with them. They appreciate knowing that they're not alone in their struggles. And I think that was really critical for me to share with people, because I had all these single friends who were Christians, and we'd get together and we'd talk and we were real with each other. But when I went to the bookstore again, I didn't see a reflection of where people were really living. or their real struggles. No one was admitting their struggles. It was all about, oh, praise the Lord. And it's like, yeah, I'll praise the Lord, but what do I do with these hormones when they're crawling up around my neck? Or, praise the Lord, but what do I do when I'm lonely in the midnight hour and all my friends are getting married and I'm always a bridesmaid, never a bride? Or I'm dealing with daddy issues and I keep attracting the wrong men in my life, and on and on and on. I wasn't reading the conversations that I was having, and I felt that they needed to be addressed because that was where everybody was really living. So when I wrote, people said, "Wow, I can't believe that you admitted this or you told that story about yourself." But I felt that people needed to know they were not alone, and that there was joy on the other side of the struggle, and there was a place called Happy and Single. But it was a process to get there, and you needed to be realistic with the process of getting there.
And what is that process?
Well, it's surrendering every day, and it's being honest with God always about your feelings. He can handle our emotions. He made us. He loves us. He knows how we feel and what we think anyway. And I think that if we don't know that we can approach God with all those frustrations and feelings of loneliness, He doesn't address what we don't address, because He's a gentleman. He doesn't just barge into our lives and invite Himself into areas He's not invited into. And I think that was the biggest lesson for me as a single person, to be able to go to God and say, today I don't like you and I don't like myself, and I'm angry about where I am right now. And then have Him speak into my heart and give me wisdom in that hour, and as well as comfort and a promise of things to come. So I think that it's really important for us to really have a relationship with God. I think a lot of us come to church. We come to God out of fear or looking to escape from something that we feel is holding us back or burdening us. But I don't know how much of an understanding we have about the relational aspect of God and how much God Himself craves relationship. He craves it more than we do. And that's why we crave relationship so much, because we have His heart, really. We are His children. We desire the same thing He desires. But unfortunately, we look for all the wrong things to fill that desire in us for relationship. And the first ultimate relationship is with Him. So as we build on that relationship and develop a healthy passion for Him, all the other relationships come into perspective. And that was what I didn't have. I kept trying to use the other relationships to fill the void that only God could fill. And that's why I was never satisfied. And I think that for the most part, most singles live there all their lives. They never get it. The light never comes on that the two holes in their heart that they're desperately trying to fill with a mate are really a God-sized hole and a purpose-sized hole.
What would you say to singles listening, saying, you know what, I'm really tired of people saying to us singles, God could fill that hole when Sally down here just got married. Mm-hmm. My girlfriend, but whenever somebody comes and talks to singles, they're always telling us, it's almost like a consolation prize. Well, but what you really need is more of God. But if that's the case, why are all these other people married?
But the married people need God too, in the same aspect. And it's funny. It's just like when you've dated a bad man, right? And you break up with him, you only remember the good stuff. But there's all this bad stuff. And you got to deal with the reality of the bad stuff, that you're grieving over the person that he was supposed to be as opposed to who he really was. And the same thing happens when we romanticize marriage, because there are a lot of lonely married people. So they haven't solved it either. They were single. They didn't get the piece about the relationship with God was utmost and firstmost, that they really needed to have that settled. And that should have filled their heart to overflowing first. And so they go into the marriage carrying that cavern with them that they never filled with God in the first place. And now they're with a man or with a woman, and they're still lonely. And that is the worst lonely. To have a partner and be lonely is just, it's an unspeakable lonely. So you have to deal with the reality that it sounds trite. Yes, it does. When people get up and say, what you need is more of Jesus. But it's true. Married people need more of Jesus. Single people need more of Jesus. We all need more of Jesus, period. Because if we ever focus on one person being the all in all, we will never be satisfied. God has literally wired us to fail one another. Because if one person could be our everything, we wouldn't need God. And he'll never allow that. He will never allow someone to take the spot that belongs to himself.
You are listening to Excellent Living with Cheryl Martin. You can learn more about this broadcast when you visit excellentliving.org. That's excellentliving.org. Today, Cheryl is talking with best-selling author Michelle McKinney Hammond. She has penned 40 books, including What to Do Until Love Finds You and How to Get Past Disappointment. She gets to the heart of the struggles of many singles and provides answers. Let's return to the conversation.
The messages that you shared in your first book, What to Do Until Love Finds You, all these years later, do you see those same messages as relevant in the 21st century?
Most definitely. How we're built spiritually is never going to change, regardless of the things that we decide are acceptable or unacceptable, and all the shifting morals and ethics. God's way works, bottom line. Nothing's going to shift or change about that. God doesn't change. His word doesn't change. We basically, as human beings, don't really change. We still want the same things. We still need the same things. The same things still sustain us and nurture us. So, yes, they're very relevant. I mean, that's the amazing thing. I go back and I read those books sometimes, and nothing has changed. It's the same issues, same things that we need to settle within ourselves. I'm glad that I wrote from the perspective of God and not Michelle, because then it would have had time constraints on it. But God is eternal, and he never changes. There's no shadow. He doesn't even throw a shadow. He's so constant.
You have had to live out what you've written in your book, because I'm sure when you wrote your first book in 1997, you did not expect to still be single this year.
That's very true. And I just ended a relationship. So I said, here I am again, And part of ending the relationship was that I had to live what I've written. I had to use my own yardstick and make some hard decisions and stick by them, because I realized that I've set a standard for people. And if I don't keep the standard, then everybody starts slipping, and I'm responsible for more than just me. It's not just about me. I have to say that I stopped praying about a mate many years ago. When I got happy, I just got happy, and I decided that was something that God would decide when he was good and ready. I mean, Adam didn't have to tell God when to give him a mate, and I don't feel like I have to tell God when I need a mate. I totally trust his timing. He has impeccable taste and a perfect sense of timing, and he's demonstrated that in every other area of my life. So when people ask me all the time, well, why are you single? I go,
You've written all these books.
Yeah, I've written all these books, and I think I'm single because I wrote all those books. And and I wouldn't have been writing those books if I hadn't been single. So for me, it's definitely a destiny piece. It's a God's timing piece, that God needed me to be available to do what I did. Because if I was going to practice what I preach when I had a husband, I was not going to have that type of time to do 40 books in 11 years. I mean, I would have to take a break to cook and do other things.
Do you desire, even though you've left it to God, do you still desire to get married?
Yes, but it's really weird. It's kind of like on one of those places in the back of your head. It's like on the list of, oh yeah, I'd like to do that too.
On the bucket list?
Yeah, it's on the bucket list somewhere. It's like, oh yeah, that'd be nice if I do that before I leave here. But I don't have to do it tomorrow, or anything like that. And I kind of say sometimes, how did that happen? Because there was a time when I was so desperate to be married, and that was it. That was the goal. That was the plan. Okay? The dream. And it got dashed and dashed and dashed, I think, until it just died. Just deader than dead, And then I decided, okay, next, let's move on to things that I actually really can master. But I have to say that I have conquered my life, mastered my life, whatever. I'm happy. I feel surrounded by love. I love people who are available to be loved in my life. I've got a very rich life of relationships. So I don't feel any voids. I have lots of men in my life as big brothers, friends, so I don't feel the man void either. And I've got rich female friendships. And I think that when you have a life that is well lived and well balanced in relations, in professional area, and all the different things that you're doing, that you get to put everything in perspective. And I realized that for me, as I shared with my cousin the other day, as she was, all up in arms about the ending of this relationship, she said, "Don't worry, we're going to find you somebody else." And I said, "Whoa, wait a minute, back up. Marriage is not a goal for me. Marriage will become a desire when I meet someone that I don't want to live without." Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That it will
Marry
be the
person you can live without, not the person you can live with.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, it's about the day that I meet the man that I go, wow, I want to wake up with this person every day. That's when I want to be married. Until then, I don't really have a need or a reason to want marriage. I mean, there's no person I want to attach myself to.
What do you say to single women in society today, and especially in the church? Mm-hmm. You have a lot of women who've never been married, mm-hmm. in their 40s, mm-hmm. 50s, mm-hmm. some older. And mm-hmm. they say, "You know what, Lord, I don't understand this." I think in the privacy of their hearts, they say, "I've done this thing right. Mm-hmm. I have lived by the book, mm-hmm. and I have no prospects." Mm-hmm. And I'm really beginning to wonder, mm-hmm. if you really care.
Mm-hmm. He does care. And the fact that you're alone is because he cares. Because you could be with the wrong person and having a very miserable existence. Something is not necessarily better than nothing. If that something is not the right something. And I think that a lot of people end up settling because they decide that something's better than nothing, and then they find out otherwise. I'm 54. I've never been married. I started walking with the Lord when I was 21. So we've had a long time to hang out together. And I've watched, it's interesting, most of my friends got married later in life. And they've all said the same thing. It was worth the wait. I tell single people all the time, stop blaming God for you being by yourself. You are single by choice more than you want to admit it. Because many people have approached you and then wanted you to go out to lunch or dinner, or were interested in you, and you were not interested in them because you had an idea of what you wanted. So it's not really for lack of options that you are still single. It's your choices. We all make the choice based on what we decided that we wanted. So you're single by choice. You're not that much of a victim, really. Then they kind of look at me like,
Well, the question could be then, but why hasn't God brought the right person?
Well, maybe
I've been waiting and waiting and waiting.
But do you know he hasn't brought the right person, or did you just decide you didn't like the way he looked? You didn't like the socks he wore? I have been the queen of bad choices when it comes to men. I used to tease people and say, I like a little trash with my class, and that trash always gets me in trouble. My desires have changed over the years, but most certainly for the better part of the first part of my life, I was just attracted to the wrong men. I can't blame that on God. I knew better, but that was just what was attractive to me. And I think that we have to become really realistic and get in touch with how much a part we play in the choices we make. God is not hindering us from doing anything. We're free to do anything. Does he know what's best for us? Yes. And I think that he holds on to it till we see and agree with him that is what's best for us.
Are you of the philosophy, and I've heard different schools of thought on this, that God is intimately involved in bringing the right mate to you?
I think he is. And I think that because God is about perfection and perfection in the realm of maturity, that it's like he's not going to put a 2-year-old behind the wheel of a Rolls Royce. So he's not going to torture a good man by giving him an incomplete you. One of my friends, Rebecca Osegbova, wrote in her book and said that when was Eve presented to Adam? When she was finished. And I think that the more we yield to allowing God to finish us, the faster we'll be presented to our Adam.
So we could be the holdup.
We could be the holdup. Most of the time we are the holdup.
That's something to think about.
Best-selling author and speaker Michelle McKinney Hammond has many more insights to share with singles. She'll join Cheryl again next month here on Excellent Living. Michelle has written books for singles, women, and men. Titles include Finding the Right Woman for You, Why Do I Say Yes When I Need to Say No, and How to Be Blessed and Highly Favored. To learn more about Michelle's life and calling, just visit MichelleHammond.com. That's MichelleHammond.com. And to learn more about this broadcast, just log on to excellentliving.org. There you can read Cheryl's blog and sign up for our updates and quarterly newsletter. Or you can order a CD of today's program when you click on resources when you visit excellentliving.org. Keep in mind this program is listener supported. If you enjoy what you're hearing, why not show tangible support by giving a donation of any amount? You can do so online on our secure website, or by sending your gift to Excellent Living, Post Office Box 15285, Chevy Chase, Maryland 20825. That's P.O. Box 15285, Chevy Chase, Maryland 20825. Thanks so much. We invite you to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. I'm Doris McMillan, reminding you that excellent living is doing life God's way.